You ready, Iggy?
Oh my goodness.
Okay. All right.
We need like a little intro song.
He does an intro song. Do you ever listen to our podcast? It's not a game show. That's a game show. Okay. Hi, welcome. No. Are we ready? Oh, okay. Hey, hello.
Hello.
This is Bennie.
And Valerie.
And this is the Living Your Best Life or Wholehearted Living. So
wow, we didn't even plan that.
No, we didn't. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if you guys heard this in the last podcast. It might have been the last one or the time before. But I asked Benny if he thought Wholehearted Living might be a good name for our podcast. Because we were still stuck on living your best life. Not quite sure if we really wanted to land on that forever.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's right that we were stuck on it. I think we were just like resigned to the fact that this is it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I mentioned Wholehearted Living and you were kind of like, eh.
For whatever reason, when you originally said it sounded like too big of a word.
It's not adaptogens.
So it seriously sounded like, what in the world is she saying? And then and reading and doing, you know, we'll get into what we're doing now, but in just thinking about it, I went, wow, it actually is really, really cool. So
it's very, like we were just saying, it's all encompassing, and I really do feel like it fits for what we want for this direction of our podcast.
Yeah, because wholehearted living is really the direction, and that living your best life implies that you can't have anything bad happen, and nothing bad does happen, and so on. And we all know that that's simply not the case. Mm-hmm. I mean, we get sick.
I mean, I still like it. I know that Peter actually makes fun of living your best life because he feels like it's such a cliche term, if you will. But at the end of the day, that's really what I want for people, is to live their best life.
Absolutely.
But I agree with you that wholehearted living actually,
it's more complete. And it really allows a person. There's more grace in it.
Exactly.
I think, because,
there's more grace. I like that. Yeah.
There's more grace in it because we don't always live exactly the way we want to live, right? Mm-hmm. So it's nice that we can do that. So anyway, we are grateful for Iggy being here,
Iggy.
Getting our sound stuff, making sure that we sound good.
I got here early. I didn't even know this is always ready. And I got here early and he was still putting everything up, Iggy. And I just didn't know all that you did. Thank you.
She just said I was late.
No, she said she was late. You said early. You were early. Yeah, that's right. Actually, you weren't early.
I know. Well, what I meant was earlier than when this is set up.
Normal.
Yeah.
Right.
But
yeah. So, but hey, thank you, Iggy, for doing this and being part of it. We are glad that you are with us. This has been for the last 20 plus episodes. This is normally the podcast where one of us comes with a topic and the other one is surprised.
Right. We're surprised by what the other person brings to the table. But we're kind of moving in a different direction right now for the time being. We're still obviously going with wholehearted living and wanting you to have the best life you can live. But that being said, we're really open to how we make that happen. And so recently, and we announced this last week, we are going to do a little, not a book review, because that's like implying we're going to talk about the goods and the bads of it. Mm-hmm. We're really just reading a book together. Mm-hmm. We encourage you to read it with us. And then we're going to talk about things that hit us, hit us right, and maybe hit us wrong. Sure.
And then perhaps we're going to talk about, very specific things that it addresses or whatever. And we're only going to do it one chapter at a time.
Yes.
Yeah. So the goal isn't to finish the book quickly, nor is it the goal. Like, in other words, I'm more concerned about quality. Not that we're going to do one page. It's not like a verse by verse type thing. We're just trying to get some really good content, anything that's going to be helpful and help us live wholeheartedly. So that's really the goal.
And then, by the way, the name of the book is Imperfect, The Gifts of Imperfection by
Brené Brown. We brought this up on our last podcast. So if you want to follow along and grab the book on Amazon or wherever you grab your books, you are more than welcome to follow along with us, because I know I think I said this the last podcast that, it's kind of like a book club, but it's not so much of like reading through the book with you, or even Benny and I reading through the book but just taking away bits and pieces of what we are reading in each chapter and how we can apply it to our lives if we agree or disagree with some of the things that were mentioned in this particular chapter.
Yeah.
And
one thing that we just noticed is, as we've done 20 some podcasts, we noticed that Valerie and I very much think alike. Mm-hmm. And so we talk about very similar things. And so quite frankly, we wanted it's like having a professional interview.
Exactly.
Without having to pay the person.
Yeah.
So this is a way that we could get some insight and then and new, for lack of a better word, new content. We're obviously still going to be Benny and Valerie. So, mm-hmm. but we would like to hear from you. We're not going to surprise you. So, well, actually, we're going to surprise you today a little bit, but we're not going to surprise you in general. So we're going to tell you we're reading this next.
Yeah.
And so you could come prepared with it. And then that way you're going to it and listening to us and maybe thinking, or maybe you even want to send something a little ahead of time and say, why don't you talk about this? Because that was fascinating. Mm-hmm. So we would love to hear from you and know what you're thinking. So there you go. That's kind of the general idea.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, last week, though, Valerie, you, well, before we even start reading the book a little bit, do you want to just share anything that's been going on with you? How you are?
I'm doing pretty good. I actually got sick, which I haven't been sick in years. And so I wasn't really quite sure exactly what I had. I'm not sure if it was a cold. It could have actually been a migraine. It could have been the flu. I don't even know, but it lasted a couple days. But what was really interesting is the actual part where I felt out of it was 2 days. But then for like a week later, I was just very lethargic. And I don't know if part of it was just that I wasn't eating enough. Like I did not eat very much. I did not have an appetite. But, so, with the hustle and bustle of Christmas, which is something that we talked about, I was very lax on, keeping up on my supplements. And so I don't know if that had something to do with it too, because I was just like, oh my gosh, I wasn't taking my phyto greens. I wasn't, and so I started like doubling up on all that stuff since then, and just hoping that I'll just keep skating through this time of year without getting any.
Yeah, you had something that was very similar to what I had, what Trinity had, and it's just basically this thing of, I mean, I have no idea what it was, so I didn't test for COVID. I don't think you tested.
No, I didn't.
And but in the end, it's weird because you feel 100% fine, except for you have no energy.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. I felt physically fine.
Yeah.
Fine. And then I get up to, I'm fine. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to do, and the next thing you know, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I got to sit down. Yeah. I felt winded. I felt out of breath.
It's so bizarre to say you feel, but I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But it's weird to say you feel physically fine, but tired.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Well, and when I told you how I felt, and you go, oh my God, that's exactly what I had in November. Yeah.
Because it just feels so weird to say, I feel fine, but I'm so tired. Well, it doesn't make sense. If you're tired, then you don't feel fine. But it's like, I do. I did feel like, I didn't feel like I was sick. I didn't feel like anything was wrong. But then all of a sudden I go for a walk. The walk I've done a gazillion times and I can't make it.
Yeah.
And so I literally stop halfway. And so, it was just the weirdest thing. So
but it does feel good to feel good.
Yeah. So it's nice to both be healthy. Patty and I did I mention we got a car last?
Yeah. Yeah. We talked about it last time.
Oh, we already talked about it. So I wanted to talk about it again because I really like it. So one thing that I did do that I have to tell you, it does that thing where it drives by itself. Did I tell you this? It'll drive by itself. They don't see your face.
Oh, I was doing like a face like, huh?
But one time Patty and I went to go see Trinity at work, and I parked, and where I parked, and when I got out of the car, it wasn't a big deal. Well, it wasn't a big deal the second time either, but I wanted to use the new device. And so, but it was really close to these little
oh my
trees.
God, were you outside of the car and you drove the car?
And so what happens is that it was raining, and so I didn't want to get in the trees, and then the trees because not trees, they're
like the shrubs,
bush, yeah. And so I would have been all wet. Mm-hmm. So what I did was you can
like do some buttons. I'm not going to explain it to you. It doesn't matter. And literally just hold this one button down and it drives straight out.
Oh,
and it drove
goodness.
out and just stopped so that I didn't have to get in the bushes.
For some reason, I remember hearing about these cars that did this a few years back. And I remember thinking, until something happens, then they're going to say, nope, we can't do that anymore.
Yeah, well, until it does happen, I'm going to use it. So, and then the other thing, I know I'm going to sound like I'm 175 years old, because the other thing is this has been going on for a long time. I remember somebody telling me about it 15 years ago. But it's also kind of fun that I can go, you can start the car, like you can tell it, I want it, like all the climate that you want,
right.
5 minutes beforehand, and you can push it, turn it on, and
that's
then
happened for a while.
Yeah, that's happened for a while, but I didn't have that.
I know.
My car barely had reverse. So my car had a little door in the bottom, and you opened it so you can go in reverse with your legs.
Oh, well, see, I mean,
like the
Flintstones. Oh boy.
You were going to say something before.
Oh, I was going to say I have that car basically that you have to pedal to get going.
You're such a liar. You have a nice car.
I mean, it's an okay car, but you know what? We went and got, oh my God, this is a crazy story. I pulled out my DMV thing thinking, oh my gosh, that's right. I got to pay my registration on my car.
Oh yeah. You told us this, I think last week.
Did I talk about it? Okay.
And then you need a smog check.
And then I needed a smog check. When I went to go get the
California
smog check.
thing for all those folks.
Yeah.
You have to validate that your car isn't producing too much smog.
Right.
Yeah.
But my car did not pass the smog check, not because it produced too much smog. It's because there was some kind of an alert thing for my brakes, something with the brake. So when they go to do the smog check, it runs a bunch of tests. And then this thing came up and it said, it's not going to allow you to pass the smog check till that's fixed.
So it had nothing to do with smog.
Nothing to do with smog.
Oh, so they didn't want you to die without brakes.
But they just basically said it was a electrical thing.
Oh,
so
it wasn't even like your brakes were messed up.
No. And so long story short, we took it to the guy. We're like, how much is it going to cost to do this? And he says it was like $150 or whatever. Cause we were thinking, oh my God, if it's a couple $1,000s, this is silly. But it was like $150. So we're like, okay, fix it. But both the smog guy and the mechanic said, once you get this fixed, don't go back and get it smogged. You need to drive it 80 miles at 65 miles an hour without stopping. So get on the freeway, make sure there's no traffic, and go. And then you can't stop. You have to just do this the whole time. So Peter went at like 10 p.m. at night or something so that he didn't hit any traffic. He did all that. A couple of days later, I took it back in.
FYI, people, if you live in California, you don't get to go 80 miles an hour almost anywhere for any
Not
length
80
of
miles
time.
an hour, 65 miles an hour
65 miles
for
an
80
hour.
miles.
For 80 miles. Yeah.
But you can't. We have so much traffic all the time. It's very hard to not.
Where the heck did he go?
Irvine.
That's not 80 miles.
Well, back. He was allowed to get back on and then come back. So anyway, I took it to go get the smog check, and they said, it still didn't register.
Oh my
you
gosh.
still have to drive it. And I'm like, well, he did what you guys said. And he goes, look up on Google your car, the year, and it'll tell you exactly what to do for this particular, I forgot the name of it. And I said, okay, so we did. And then it said, drive 50 miles an hour and go down to a slow 20 without pushing the brake. So you had to find somewhere in our area to drive 50 miles an hour and then slow it down to 20 miles an hour without slowing down with the brake.
This sounds comical. Like
it
somebody's
really does.
joking with
There's like stoplights every 10 feet.
Yes, exactly. It sounds like this is like so fake.
It's a thing. And you Google it and there's YouTube videos on it. And there's people like, this is what you do for the Toyota. This is what you do for Honda. This is what you do. It's crazy. So Peter did it. He goes, I was able to do it. It was hard to do, but I was able to do that. So I'm like, okay, I'll take it in and see what happens. It worked. And so he goes, oh, we're ready. We'll smog it. Well, it passes or the alert didn't come out. So now we will do the smog check. And then it passed. And so
that is the most ridiculous thing
It was so
ever.
ridiculous. I was just like, this.
So this reminds me of, I think I told you already what I used to do in Ecuador. It reminds me of the same thing. In other words, there's nothing, it's like you're just fiddling with the system.
Yeah.
Because it really doesn't.
Well, it didn't even have anything to do with
different.
emissions
That's
or anything.
what I'm saying. Your car.
It
sounds like the smog check must.
Smog checks
must be like a healthy. Is the car like healthy?
Yeah,
maybe,
because it
like
came
that.
up on a monitor. There was all these different alerts. And it was basically not really actually running the actual smog check on the car. It was just saying, this isn't registering okay on your car. So you need to fix this before we will actually do the smog check, because it's not going to let you pass it.
That's crazy.
If that's still, anyway, I'm like, okay, whatever.
Whatever.
It's done.
That doesn't make any sense.
There you go.
But that's fun.
Yeah.
Very fun. Well,
All
you
right.
ready to get into it?
Let's get into this.
Okay. Well, so here we are. We are going to get into the gifts of imperfection. And so one thing that we did say last week, and so this is the only little wrench that we are changing, is we said, hey, we're just going to jump right into the guideposts. Mm-hmm. Well, after having read it again and talking with Valerie,
there's a lot to be said in that.
Yeah,
in
you
the
really
pre-log
can't do any. You won't understand the guideposts. There's no meaning to the guideposts, or very little meaning to the guideposts, if we don't address the preface and that first part. I don't know what she calls it. So
there's a lot of things she calls it. There's like a lot before.
Yeah, because she just it is. Here it says preface, but then it goes into the and then she just titles them. Mm-hmm. It's not like she goes chapter 1, chapter 2. Exactly. She just titles them. So well, first off, in what you've read in general, without getting into any details, I'm wondering, do you have anything that you'd like to share? Like anything because I'm interested in yours even more than mine, because this is my second read. Mm-hmm. So it's not my first impression.
Well, like I said last week, I honestly thought the beginning part of this was so freaking long, because if you do have the book, or if even if you don't, the table of contents reads like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different things before you get into the guidepost.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, oh my gosh, I just want to get into the guidepost. And then when you said, you know what, we really should talk about what's in the beginning. And I browsed through it again right after you said that. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. There's a lot to be said, and it will help you as you go through the guideposts.
Well, I think it's a classic thing of it's kind of trying to fix something that you don't know what the need is. So if you don't understand the need, if you don't understand what's already going on, then there's nothing to fix. Mm-hmm. So it's like, so what she does, what Brené Brown does here in that first section, is she really helps us understand a lot about, first of all, shame, which is a big part of who she is understanding shame. She's a shame researcher, if you don't know anything about her, or never read her books or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And no one wants to know about shame, which is fascinating, because, you really do think about it. We don't talk a lot about shame. And I don't even know, a lot of people don't even have a person that they can talk to about the things that they're shameful about.
Well, what's really interesting in talking about shame is that I didn't even know how to define shame. I was like, I don't know if there's ever been a time where I felt shame, like I had shame, or I felt shameful, or whatever. Like I don't know. Like in my mind, honestly, I was like, I can't really relate to shame in all honesty. And then you go through it, and I was just like highlighting and underlining and starring, and I was annotating like crazy. And some things really hit me with my ex-marriage in terms of how I felt about how the shame. Exactly. Yeah. And so
and how you deal with shame. So without, I don't want it to become just therapy for Valerie. I don't want to put you on the spot. But are there things that you underlined that you want to share?
Oh, there's a lot. We can go for on and on. But one thing that really stuck to me when I just mentioned about my ex. Well, this is something this is what I did underline, and this isn't where I was going to pull right now, but I just saw this. I wrote on the side, do unto yourself as you would do to others. And that was something that I read about here there was love and belonging, right? Yeah. And one of them was talking about there's a difference between being trying to fit in and actually belonging. And then I know I always have said this. I think we talked about it in one of our podcasts, but she says in here, I know I can talk to myself in ways that I would never consider talking to another person.
Right.
And I put like right next to it, speak kindly to you. And that was the other thing, is like, we talked about this on one of our podcasts before about how, sometimes we talk so down to ourselves, right, about ourselves, but we would never say that to a friend. If they came to you with that particular feeling, you would never talk down to them or make them feel less than. You would try to lift them up and encourage. And
well, and I love that whole section about talking about belonging versus what is the other word? I'm sorry. You just
fitting in.
Fitting in. And that is such a big part, because I know for a lot of my career, there's different parts of my career where I look back and there's certain beliefs and values that I still hold and maintain, but I would even exaggerate certain things in order to fit in with that particular crowd. And then I would avoid talking about those certain things with this crowd. And I would do certain things because I'd really want to fit in.
Right.
Instead of just be who I am.
Exactly.
And it reminds me of a story of a guy who, when we were, this might take a long time. This might take too long to explain in detail for you to truly understand. So hopefully you're going to get the point. But I'll never forget the time that we had a guy, when Patty and I were planting the church in Ecuador, but there was this guy who I couldn't put my finger on it, but he didn't fit into us. He didn't belong with us. And what I noticed is, so one of the guys that did very much belong to us was a guy who had, he had long curly hair, and he would put it in ponytail, and, he wore his hats, and he was just very himself, who he was. And I loved this guy from the very beginning, and we had to get to know each other and so on, but it was very quick that I trusted him, that this guy gets us. This guy gets the direction we're going. He gets where we're going. He really understands all that. And then this other guy, though, the way he looks doesn't matter, but he was more of a suit and tie guy, that kind of a thing. But at the same time, the way he talked, I was always wondering what the heck was going on with him. One day he shows up and he's got a ponytail, just like the other guy. And it wasn't like him at all to have a ponytail. But I realized that he was trying to, the long and the short of it is, the thing that made me so uncomfortable about him is he wasn't himself. Yeah. He was trying to be what we wanted, or what he thought we wanted. Yeah. And that was more uncomfortable than if he was himself. Right. I mean, if he would have just been his true authentic self. But the problem is, as I look back on it, years and years and years later, he ended up leaving. But the problem with it is that I don't think he knew who he was. I don't think it was him not being himself. And hindsight's 2020, but this was 20 years ago. So I didn't know what I know now, but I probably would have said, now knowing what I know, I would have said, who are you? Tell me who you are, and let's help identify who you are, and then be that person. We're not trying to make you something to fit into us.
But people do that in general. And it's funny because as I read this, I was thinking, gosh, have I ever been that person where I was just trying to fit in, or did I actually belong? Have I always tried to be my own authentic person? Self, yeah.
Wholehearted living.
Wholehearted. But I honestly feel like I can't think back to a lot of days, but I mean, I think as of late, if I belong, I belong. I'm not trying to conform. I'm not trying to be something that I'm not. Sometimes you will have conversations with people that you wouldn't with another group, but I think that also is not necessarily not trying to fit in, but it's more
being courteous and kind,
because
and
there's certain
rude.
Exactly.
Yeah. For instance, you're not going to probably go into a church group and just start cussing your brains out and yelling and screaming, and even if that's your authentic self,
there's certain people that you're not going to have certain political conversations with, where you would with others. And
it's not because I'm not being my authentic self, because if they were to ask me,
of course,
then I'm going to tell them the truth.
Of course.
On the other hand, just talking about it, you're actually almost instigating a fight. You're just trying to do that. On the same line of what you were saying earlier, I want to read this little thing. It says, how much we know and understand ourselves is critically important, but there is something that is even more essential to living a wholehearted life. And it says, loving ourselves.
Yes, exactly.
And I found this really fascinating. I think I alluded to it a long time ago in one of the podcasts too, but reading it again and reading it here was really fascinating to me, in that it's really, really common for parents, especially moms, quite frankly, to say, oh, I love my kids. I love my kids so much. And then if you ask them, do you love yourself? They say, oh no, I don't love this about me. I don't love that about me, and so on. And her comment here is, it's impossible to impart something to someone else that you don't have yourself.
You cannot, honestly. And I read that too and thought the very same thing, because I thought, well, of course I can love my husband wholeheartedly, I don't know if I love myself that much. I'm just saying this because I actually am okay with myself. But but the same thing with your kids. I love my kids more than anything in the whole entire world. Do I love myself? No, I don't love myself right now. But do you love your kids all that you can really love them if you don't love yourself? Like,
yeah. Well, because what she ends up doing is saying, if we, whatever that list is that we don't love about ourselves, we're eventually going to apply that to other people. And we're applying it to other people another way. Well, now we might give them more grace because of the relationship we have and because of learned experience, etc. And we don't want to necessarily be the parents that our parents were, which our parents, I don't think were always like that. But I'm getting at the fact that we might try to change our behavior, but the fact of the matter is that the kids are looking at your behavior in general more than they're just looking at what you say.
Well, see, and that is exactly what I took away from that, is that if your child sees that you're putting a lot of moms, like you just mentioned, a lot of moms they put themselves on the back burner. There's not a lot of self-love. There's not a lot of self-care because they are doing for so many people, right? So, but if your children see that you are taking the time to self-care, to treat yourself right, to do what you need to do to be whole so that you can give all that you can give to your own children or families or whatever, they're gonna do the same. It's not about telling them that you need to do this for yourself, you need to do that, you need to do. But Mom, are you doing that for yourself? Like, honestly, that's.
Well, and I think everybody's had that person that said something to you, that said something like, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, and then you're kind of looking at their life and you're thinking, well, you clearly don't do that.
Right.
You're not living that life. So
actions are so much
they speak
louder.
So much louder. And so if we're not loving ourselves and we're telling our kids, for instance, we're saying to our kids when they start saying, oh, I'm worthless, or I can't do this, or I'm so this or that. And we're saying, no, you're not. No, you're not. If you're saying the same things to yourself, there is no reason and no way you're going to get that out of them.
It goes back to, like, have you ever heard, when you go back into like children hearing the mom or dad just going, oh my gosh, I'm so fat. Oh my gosh, I look terrible in this outfit. Oh, I can't wear that bathing suit because I look, whatever. Your children are picking up on all of that, and they're not seeing you love yourself. Right. You know what I mean? Of course, nobody's perfect, and we're all going to say something negative at some point or another. But if it's a constant thing, how do you expect your child to love themselves when they're just seeing you constantly downgrade yourself? And that's why I read what I read just a few minutes ago. It's like, you got to speak to yourself the same way you would speak to somebody else, especially in front of kids that you're raising.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's critical in terms of what's gonna come up in regards to the guideposts is that whole aspect of, part of confronting that is confronting shame. What you were talking about earlier is confronting and dealing with the shame, and instead of ignoring it or putting it away, I think shame,
or not even recognizing it, because I think that was one thing, like I just said, I didn't even recognize anything in my life as shame. And it's a huge thing. And I love that she really tackles it before you get into the guideposts.
Well, and I think for me, the shame aspect, I had so much shame in my life, but you have to have a certain, there was just a sense in my life that I was doing things that just nobody should be doing. And then all of a sudden it's like, I knew I shouldn't be doing it, but I had nobody to talk to. And it's one of those amazing things about, the Bible talks about confess your sins one to another so you can be healed. And I used to confess, but without getting into detail. Like it's like one thing to say, it's one thing to kind of say, I'm struggling with my thought life, or I'm struggling with this or that or the other. And it's a totally different thing to go, this is what's going on right now.
It's like when, when I think about Catholics and going to confessional, because we too were Catholics and went to confessional. And I just remember like sitting in there going, I lied.
Yes.
And then like, that was it. You know what I mean? And it was just like, so it's just like, oh, okay, there's no accountability to anything, because
well, and you don't feel shame in saying that. I mean, you feel nervous because it's weird to tell this dude on the other side, and we were young when we did this, but it's not a very real thing. I remember later, it's so funny you brought that up, because I remember seeing movies with adult Catholics who were real Catholics. I mean, I say real in that they embraced the faith and they walked it out. And I remember them like, they knew the father that they were talking to, and they start cussing at him, you know, and they're talking to him, and the father's like talking back, not talking back meanly. I mean, trying to help them, conversing, but this guy's being real. And I thought, that's right. That's right. I mean, that's the way you should be. But I wasn't that guy.
No.
There's no way.
No, I mean, it was even to the point where I had to make up things because I couldn't even remember what I did wrong.
Yes, exactly.
And so, but then when you go, like, you know, I don't want to get into the like religion and spiritual part, but you know, when you actually talk to Jesus without feeling there's a man there that you're telling, like I mean, I don't know if I necessarily cuss when I talk to Jesus about things, but I talk like I'm talking to a person next to me. Like there's no, I don't know. I can't explain
facade.
It.
It's just you're not. You're being wholehearted. You're being the person that you are. Yeah. Well, and what's interesting is that I could always be pretty real with God, but I wasn't real with people. And I think that's another thing is that this is where that verse comes into play. You know, I'm not preaching here, but I'm just saying that it's fascinating to me because confessing your sins one to another, you know, it goes beyond just, you know, God. It's like we need that person or people that we can honestly share what's going on, because we need the kind of God, the God in the flesh. We need the touch. We need that person to hug us. We need that person, even more importantly, and we'll get into this in the book, but we need that person to be able to say to us, I get it. I get it. I'm with you. Even, you know, even if we can't relate in the sense of having done the exact thing that person did, we might be able to relate to the shame, or we might be able to relate to the experience in general, and then coming alongside that person is super, super important. I have a guy that I talk to every single morning, and I'm able to share with him my last 24 hours, things that went good, things that went bad, things I'm grateful for. And he does the same with me, and I can say anything to this guy.
But don't you feel like when you, because everything I'm hearing you say, it almost reminds me of like an accountability partner, where you, anything in your life, the minute you put it out there, you're accountable. You know what I mean? You're being held accountable too. You know, whether it's something that you're talking about, or, you know, like, you know, something as silly as, like, I told you that I want to get a pull up in, and I'm gonna, but if I had it in my head the whole time, I might weasel my way out of it a little bit.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So I'm telling people about it. I'm with Peter at the gym going, okay, I'm going to go hang from the bar for a minute. I'm going to do some deficits. And so it's very important to have somebody in your life that you can talk to. That's right. You know, can offer feedback, if anything.
And I love the fact that you're bringing up accountability, because one thing that, you know, I've had many people over my life, because of the nature of my job, ask me to hold them accountable. And I would always turn it back on them and say, you realize what accountability is? And they're like, no. Because what they want is they want me to call them and say, hey, are you doing your push-ups, or are you are you eating correctly? Right. Or, you know, what do you want to, are you supposed to eat that today? They kind of want that, because it's like, then they don't have to think and they don't have to do their will. They can blame it on me.
Right.
And I'm always like, hey, accountability works one way, and that is you're going to keep me posted on how you're doing.
Exactly.
And then this is how it works. And that's exactly what's so funny with my friend is he doesn't give me advice. You know, sometimes I'll ask him about certain things, but for the most part, when it comes to a lot of the things that I'm bringing up, I know what I should do, or I know what I shouldn't be doing.
You're just getting it out there, and
I have to
ear
get it
to
out
listen.
there.
Yeah,
and having it out there and having the freedom to talk to people about certain things. I mean, I'm even talking about just resentments that I might carry. They're sometimes really stupid. I'm talking about talking on the phone with somebody. I mean, these are the kind of things that happen nowadays. Talking to a salesman on the phone and being a complete prick to that person, you know, just because I know that they have to they have to treat me a certain way. And then later feeling like I didn't need to be that way. You know, I could be still firm, but I didn't have to be a jerk.
Right.
And then, and just things like that. Obviously things with my family, things with anybody, and just being able to share, you know, even if I didn't, sometimes I'm carrying something in my head
and I have to share it with him. Sometimes I'm so shameful about some of the things that I might have done. I actually text him the day before and say, don't let me not say this. Because it's like, I know that I might justify it tomorrow morning and go, nah, I don't need to share.
Yeah.
But it's a big deal for me to have somebody that I can actually share. And it's not like, I don't know.
What do you like? So we're getting into the shame, but what is your definition of shame? Like, what do you, when you think of shame, what are you feeling? What are you, how are you relating it to yourself? I'm just curious.
Yeah. Well, shame for me are behaviors, whether they be mental behaviors or actual physical behaviors that are, and actions that create a feeling that ultimately makes me look at myself and say I am bad. Like in it, it's like I am bad, not the behavior is bad. I am bad.
Exactly.
Like I did something. I did something wrong, and so I start to live in that world. And what's interesting is the more that I live in that world, the more I spiral and the worse I am. It's like, but when I'm able to share the thing with somebody who's a good confidant that I can, I think I want to be careful here. I know people who share everything out loud. Like they just tell everything to everybody. And I think they think, yeah, I don't have to carry around the shame. But the truth is like doing that, I don't think that's the same thing, because it's like it's a fake way of sharing what really is going on, because it's like I'm just gonna floodlight you with a bunch of information and you're just kind of like shocked with it, like, what do I do with this? What am I supposed to do with this information? And so I think that that's not necessarily a healthy thing. It's really about saying, I definitely feel something real and telling this person that I trust. Do you understand the difference? You know people that are kind of just blah, 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 and they share everything that's on their mind. And you kind of
like I'm an open book, they say. You know? And it's like, and that's great. But is it really like a wholehearted thought process of what you're actually feeling about that? What
were you going to read?
No, I was going to say that there was something that I was reading where she actually puts like a bunch of bullet points. And if you don't have the book, I'm going to just actually read these bullet points really quick.
Go for it.
One of them is, what will people think? You can't really love yourself. You're not blank enough, and then she puts in parentheses, pretty, skinny, successful, rich, talented, happy, smart, feminine, masculine, productive, nice, strong, tough. There's just like so many there. And I remember but now that I'm looking back, I feel like so much of this I related to when I was married to my ex-husband, because I didn't feel worthy. I didn't feel worthy. And I thought it was all my fault. I wasn't good enough. I had to, everything, when I read that, you really can't love yourself. You're not blank enough. And I put a lot of those words that were just there in that blank, like, because that's how I was made to feel. And, but anyway, so she says, no one can find out about blank. I'm not going to pretend that everything is okay. Or I'm sorry. I'm going to pretend everything is okay. I can change to fit in if I have to. Who do you think? And see, that was another thing I would do back with him, with my ex, is try to fit in some way. Like, maybe if I'm this way, I will be treated differently. Maybe if I do this, today I'm going to try this. Where I wasn't being my authentic self at all, because I was trying to conform. And, so all of these are really
practical.
Yeah.
Very practical.
And relatable. I think we can all, everybody can relate to that. I already mentioned, in my job, I love, there were so many things that what's interesting is that it's interesting how you could justify fitting in, meaning it's like, whether it's I should believe that, or I should act like that, or I should, and it's like there's certain things that you kind of just feel. I hate to say this now that I'm not a pastor, I cuss 1,000 times more than I ever did. And what's interesting about it is that it's just because it's not because I don't love God as much as I ever loved him before. It's just that I think sometimes it's just the word that fits me, that whatever is going on. And
what's funny
you
is
can't find another word.
I could, and so I don't want to make it sound like it's perfectly okay, but sometimes for me that's just it is in fact who I am. Now, do I have to do it every single time and like we said, if I'm in front of certain people, then it's like I'm not going to purposely offend somebody else who just doesn't want to hear that.
Sure.
But on the other hand, for me, it's like there's just sometimes it's the word that fits for me, and it's quick, and it's like and the thing is that it's just a word.
Yeah.
It's like it doesn't have to offend anybody. It's just a word, but for whatever reason, there's all these things that are around it, and and so what? She's grabbing my hand. I did something icky.
No, I'm thinking about Marley when she was pulling something out of the refrigerator. You guys, this is like off.
Marley is
a tangent.
her
Marley's my granddaughter. She was probably 2 at the time. She's like 2.5 now, but she was like, I think legit 2, maybe. I don't know. She was pulling strawberries out of the refrigerator and they almost kept falling. And it was just so cute because every time she started to grab it and it would start to fall, she'd go, oh shit. Oh shit. Oh shit. And Nicole's recording this and she's dying and she knew what to say in the exact moment of it. And it was just so funny. And then she goes, there we go. Got the strawberries. Like she didn't even like.
Well, you want to know what's really funny about that is every time Patty says it, that's the way she says it now. Every time she does something up and she goes, oh shit. But yeah. Well, I think we're just about there, which is fascinating to me because I thought that we would get all the way through this and maybe get bored of each other, but no. I am not even close to being done with what I would have liked to say.
But I liked how we touched on it because I think we need to relate to it.
Yeah.
And
I think the thing is that one of the big highlights is courage, compassion, and connection. And so ultimately it's like, this is what we need and this is what we're looking for, right? We're looking for compassion and connection, and then we need courage to make it happen.
And courage is a practice.
Yes. It's not something, and this is going to get into some of the other stuff, but man, there's so many different things that she says. I hope that you get a chance to read it. But I just wonder, I'm imagining that some of you out there have dealt with shame at some levels, or negative self-talk, and beyond negative self-talk. But I guess it's all negative self-talk. But specifically, we're talking about this idea of shame. And we're not talking about guilt. We'll talk about that, I think, later in one of the guideposts. But guilt is I did something bad. Shame is I am bad. And so there's a very clear distinction between the two, because we can have guilt because we do make mistakes and that's actually helpful.
Totally.
It could drive you to good behavior. But shame never, ever works on anybody. It doesn't work on your kids, telling your kids they're bad, telling them they're dumb, telling them that they're lazy, telling them whatever. That does not work. It's going to...
And I also, encourage you to find out if you're trying to fit in or if you're actually belonging. Yeah. And, there was a huge... Reading that really made me feel... I was pulled because I was just like... I want to belong. I really do want to belong. I don't want to try to conform or fit in. I just want to be my authentic self wherever I am and whoever I meet. And so it kind of just like, put a mirror in front of your face and ask yourself, am I trying to fit in or do I belong?
Right. Well, and that's a fascinating thing, because then that starts to bring up the people you're hanging out with and who is giving you energy and who is bringing you, sucking energy from you, and then asking the question, am I really belonging, or is it because I'm trying to fit in? And really, these aren't my people.
I feel like if you're trying to fit in, you're going to be using up a lot of energy.
Oh, yeah,
when
for
you belong, it's pretty seamless,
Yeah. And it's a different kind of energy that you expend, because you're expending it in the way of building and developing this stronger relationship, as opposed to, I am not this person that I'm trying to be. And then, what's so funny is we rarely still fit in.
No,
we still don't belong in that group. We just it's kind of fake. It's a facade. And if we would just be who we are, we actually might end up belonging a lot more if we were in fact who we were.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, on the other hand, we might realize these aren't our people.
Exactly.
And that's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
But Well, folks, I hope that you continue on with us in this journey. So next session, our next one, we're actually recording it very soon. But our next one is going to be on Guidepost 1. So we're going to move ahead. And then if we feel like, we can't do a full guidepost or whatever, we'll let you guys know so we're not reading, so you don't necessarily read way ahead. Mm-hmm. But we would love for you to stay with us. That would be great.
I mean, if you're joining us, then I really do think that you are wanting to live your best life, or wholehearted living. So I think that you would really like this book. It's a very it's the first time I'm reading it. I know Bennie read it right before, but I'm really loving
it's
it
good.
so far.
And you don't have to read it to listen to the podcast. It's not like but you will probably get more out of it if you do. So. Anywho, if you would like to comment or let us know anything, that'd be great. I'm at Bennie Gonzalez on Instagram, and you are at
A Daily Dose of Cocoa.
And so we would love to hear from you guys. Thank you for listening this time, and we want you to live your best life, and we want you to experience wholehearted living.
There you
go. There it is. Until next time.
Bye.
Ciao. Hey guys, this is Bennie.
I'm Valerie.
And we're doing this little add-on to today's podcast because...
Well, we started thinking about it as we ended that podcast, and we need a part 2 to the whole preface of the first part of this book.
Yeah, because as we went to the guideposts and we were ready to do it, we realized we just can't not say some of the other stuff that we missed. And so we're gonna do that in a podcast next week. And it's gonna be a shorter one, but it's like a part 2.
It'll be a part 2 to what we just chatted about. And again, like he just said, it's gonna be a little shorter. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So we're just prepping you guys because we told you that we're gonna be doing the guideposts and we don't want you to be reading it and then expecting it and then it doesn't happen. So in 2 weeks, the plan is to do the guideposts at this point.
But yeah, this is a lot of great information. So we're not going to keep going on right now because we'll see you guys next week. But it is information we don't want to miss out on.
That's right. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.